Let's talk about where, when, why, and how you should be adding complexity to your beats to find that perfect balance between engaging and simple enough to be easily digested. It's no secret that a 4-bar loop repeated for 2.5 minutes is not a very good song, but also a song that changes completely every 4 bars is also not a very good song. And while there's a ton of space in the middle of these two extremes, I think finding that perfect balance is one of the harder parts about getting started and really leveling up as a music producer. So to help break down this concept, I'm going to be going through a track that I made with one of my subscribers, Benz, as a part of my community collab tape that's been rolling out all month long. But more on that later, because I want to dive right into FL Studio and talk to you guys about exactly what Benz and I did on this track to make sure that it was engaging and interesting without being too overcomplicated or distracting. So this is the full project file for the track Ethereal Dreams that I made with the producer Benz. I'm not going to be getting too much into the composition or the theory behind the song. I really just want to talk about structure and some of the deliberate decisions I made in the kind of later stages of this production to really make sure that every second of the song felt new and fresh without being completely foreign to the listener. So the first and simplest thing you can do to create intrigue in one of your productions is to come up with completely discrete A and B sections. 2 sections that fit together nicely, that completely have their own identity. So I'm gonna play through what the A section is from the original loop that Ben sent me, and then the B section to show you how they fit together well, but they're definitely completely separate. So here you're gonna hear the last 4 bars of the A section and then the first 4 bars of the B section. So hopefully you heard that this arpeggiating guitar had continued through both sections, but the space it was occupying and the attention that it was grabbing were completely different, right? So this is this common through line that you've got with section A and section B. It's the pulse of the song. It's really the core identity, right? You've got this nice, kind of repetitive, very driving arpeggio that's following that same motion throughout. However, following that same motion, in the B section, we enter into a new chord progression. And that's complemented really nicely with these additional chorus guitar layers that are basically taking over the lead part of this B section here, where we're introducing a completely new type of motion in a really new register for the guitar that makes this section feel completely fresh from the first. You'll also notice that in the stems themselves, the pads have actually completely changed between these 2 sections, once again adding to that separation where section A and section B have sonically different identities, right? So that's first major umbrella concept. It's a lot easier to have an engaging track if it isn't just simply the same 4-bar loop over and over again. Each of these sections are just 4-bar loops with, you know, slightly more evolving melody in the B section than necessarily in the A section. But ultimately, it's 4 chords repeated twice, and then the 4 chords change. Every B section doesn't need to be a new chord progression, but I do think really focusing on different types of motion, different sonic profiles, and different feelings is a really good thing to try to lock in on, just to really introduce a new feeling and a new sound. So major concept number 2 is one you may have heard before, and it's really just trying to make sure that something new is happening every 4 bars. So if we bring it all the way back to the beginning of the track, we start with that arpeggiated guitar and some nice subtle guitar pads, a couple of like kind of very quiet ambiances, and that's really it for the first 4 bars. Then when that guitar part repeats, a piano comes in, another pad layer comes in, the drums and the bass all come in for 4 bars. And then 4 bars later, I lay down another guitar part that's going to help evolve that same 4-chord repeating progression so that every 4 bars it feels a little bit new before we hit the completely new section at bar 13 in this case. So let's give that whole first A section into the B section a listen now. So hopefully you heard there that as those chorus guitars progressed through the B section here, they did evolve. They weren't playing the exact same thing, 4 bars in a row. Particularly this guitar 2 kept climbing in its register. It got a little bit more active. Well, sorry, my dog was barking. Where were we? Yeah, so with the B section creating moments of contrast, while we're also evolving the melodic components throughout the B section to make sure that it's not just a 4-bar loop repeating, we're also thinking about what the supporting elements are up to, right? So we created extra contrast by removing a layer of the snare, the cymbal, this kind of like Foley shaker loop we had going on, and then we just simply reintroduce those elements 4 bars into the B section, and that's the same thing as introducing a new part, right? You want to have it essentially every 4 bars something new or something different is happening, but it doesn't always need to be a completely new stacked on top layer, if that makes sense. So getting into major concept number 3, we're going to be looking now at the repeat of the A section, right? I think the natural tendency is to just bring everything over from that first A section and say, okay, now we're back to where we were at square one, but that's obviously a little bit boring, a little bit too predictable when you're doing it just that way. So while we did essentially just bring everything over from the A section, what I really want to focus in on is what the guitar that I laid down is up to. You're going to notice the motion is paralleled really nicely with what that first guitar section was up to, but it climbs a little bit more all over the scale. It's a little bit more evolved than the first time, and of course the length is doubled here. And once again, you'll notice that we're kind of evolving this repeat of the A section by adding the snare layer as we get to the second half of this second drop, or second A section or whatever. And I also decided to automate the piano volume a little bit so that it grows and swells a little bit more. Then one added layer of complexity is where in the first A section we only had the 2 pad layers, the guitar and the sleepy pads, with the cello pads coming into the B section. This time around, the second drop feels a lot bigger because all 3 of the pads are playing at the same time. So let's listen to those last 4 bars of the B section into the second version of the A section here. So now getting into this repeat of the B section, again, slight differences from the first time around. Now we've got the full accompaniment of percussion staying through. Once again, the pad layers are still just a little bit more full than they were the first time around. And then the final little piece de résistance is that we've also added an extra guitar layer that just wasn't there at all in the first time around. So this really feels a bit more like the climax of the song. There's little things like this extra crash sound that makes it feel even more huge. And you know, a couple like nice little breaks baked into the drums that just add like this nice dynamic contrast without doing too much. Really, that's like super, you know, musically creative. There's not like, you know, a completely new C section here, for example. This is very much a repeat of the first B section. It's just kind of been evolved and reimagined a little bit with a couple of slight arrangement choices and some thoughtful layering to help make this feel pretty distinct from this first A section here. So let's give that a nice listen straight through the outro. So I mentioned at the beginning of this video that this track is part of an album that I made with my subscribers. It's been releasing all month long. The full project is called Paths. I'm super excited about it. I actually got to team up with 17 producers from right here in this community to make 17 really unique and honestly very nice lo-fi tracks that all very much have their own identity, as you know, each of the producers that are involved in the project do. So huge shout out to Benz for this amazing sample. It made my job super easy on this particular song. It's going to be coming out tomorrow on all streaming platforms, along with 3 more of the songs from that album. So if you guys want to check out this and all of the other tracks on the album that have been released so far, there's a link in the description to pre-save the entire thing, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear everything that we've been working on. So one more shout out to Benz for coming on the channel. Another thank you to Soothing Soundwaves for supporting Paths, the community collab tape. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got. So see you guys next week. Peace.